Hey guys, my name's Trish and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, please click to subscribe. I put out new videos every week, and on this channel we talk about beauty, self-care, and mental health. So you come to the right place, and this week I wanted to talk about a topic that is very close to my heart, and that is microdosing. So microdosing is a bit of a buzzword now. I'm sure most of you have at least heard of it, and it pertains to taking a very, very small dosage of a psychedelic substance, typically in the form of LSD or psilocybin mushrooms. There are a lot of sentiments floating around out there about psychedelics in general, and there have been since the 1950s and 60s. And my goal today is to shed a light on my experience with microdosing psychedelics, and hopefully some of you find it helpful, because it has been hugely instrumental in my mental health journey, in my quest to dissolve my ego a bit. And so I'm going to share my experience and what I know and some helpful resources. So if you're only here for the microdosing mental health talk portion of this video, you can go ahead and fast forward to the marker indicated on the screen right now. And if you wanted to see the look that I'm going to create today, you can stick around for the first portion of this video, because we're going to jump right into it. So the look that I'm creating today is going to be kind of this clay terracotta vibe. I was just out in New Mexico in Santa Fe and felt really inspired by all of the red rocks out there, and just the general landscape is very like warm toned and it's really beautiful. So the palette that I'm using today is a Heyyyy palette, and this was from the Burgundy palette. So just to give you guys an idea of the general vibe, the palette looks like this. And it has some really beautiful hues in here. So let's jump right in. I already prepped my skin in an effort to just cut down on a little bit of the filming time today and focus on the star of the show, which are really the eyes. So my skin is pretty much done. We'll do the eyes, and then we'll circle back to blush and, mascara and some finishing touches. So let's jump right in. Okay, so to start us off, I'm going to lay down a base for my eyes, and I'm actually using a bronzer to do this as opposed to one of the colors in the palette that I'm using today, because it's just this really nice silky matte, and it's actually from their Milani Silky Matte line. So this is their bronzing powder, and it looks like this. So I'm going to pick this color up on a fluffy Morphe brush. This is the M504. Oh, and before I even get into all of that, I did want to do a shout out to a new product line discovery. They're not new, they've been around for I don't know how long, probably a little while, but I just discovered them and fell in love with their branding and packaging and clean products. They're cruelty-free. All their containers are recyclable. They come in these really nice like glass jars, and it's called Truly. And I purchased the Unicorn Fruit Lip Plumping Balm with peppermint, matcha, and acai boost. It's this really fun lip balm. You saw the inside. It's kind of blue and green and pink and looks like cotton candy. It smells like ice cream, and yeah, I've already had it for maybe 2 weeks or so, and I dip into it multiple times a day every day, and I think this is going to last me for like a good year. Okay, so back to the eyes. As I mentioned, I'm jumping in first with this Milani bronzer to just lay down a nice neutral palette all over my lid and in my crease before we get into the clay terracotta burgundy warm tones that we're using today. Okay, now that that's done, we can start playing with some of these colors. And the first one that I wanted to use, and I'm going to take it all over my lid, is this one right here. It's called Beach, and it's this middle color. I'm going to just place it directly on my lid and work it up towards my crease. Okay, now that that is on, taking this beach, using this BH Cosmetics brush, this is the number 7, I'm going to come in with this really pretty color here, and it is called Naked, and I'm going to place that on my lid. I'm going to build the intensity just a little bit in the outer corners of my eyes by using these two colors combined. And these are called Almond and Burgundy. And then using another fluffy brush, this is a blending crease brush, I am going to pick up on three colors. I'm going to go back in with Naked, Beach, and with Almond, and just build up again in the crease. And now that that's done, I'm going to come in with the color Penny, which is the lightest one. And taking that again just on a fluffy brush, I'm going to just kind of work it into the brow bone, blending out the colors up to my eyebrow. Now to intensify the lash line a bit, I'm going to be going with a brown liner and just line the upper lash line. I use the Endless Silky Eye Pen by Pixie to line my upper lashes, and this was in the color Black Cocoa. Now I want to kind of soften the line, dragging it out a bit to create a really, really light, subtle wing. And so to do that, I'm going to use this BH Cosmetics brush number 9. And it's just a small angled brush, and then I'm going to come in and pick up on the darkest color in this palette, and this is called Brick. So taking Brick, I'm going to just work it into the upper lash line, concentrating it mostly on the outer edge of my eye, and then drag it out just slightly to create the most subtle of wings. Okay, once we're done with that, we're going to move on and do one more time with that kind of orangey color, and just go over the eye one more time and lock this in as being the primary tone in this look. And to finish this up for the shadow portion, I'm going to use this little brush. I have no idea where it came from, but it's just kind of a little brush that you can use under your eyes for more precision. And I'm going to take this color and this one right here and take them right underneath my lower lash line. Awesome. Okay, so we're done with shadow, so we can move on to finishing the rest of the face, and I'm going to start with blush. For my blush today, I am using the Bare Minerals Bounce and Blur, and this is my new favorite blush. It is, the texture of it actually feels like skin. Taking my BH Cosmetics number 3 brush, and just pick up some of that product. And for powder, I'm going to again use my Laura Mercier translucent setting powder and do just a little bit of baking, so let's go ahead and get this on. And while this is baking, just a reminder that I did already prep my skin and do my whole face before I started recording, so I did all of that off camera so that we could just focus on the eyes today. But I will link all of the products that I used for my entire face in the description box below. Using my big fluffy Morphe E41 brush, I'm going to take off all of this powder. For mascara, I'm going to use my go-to right now, and that is the Pixie by Petra Large Lash Mascara, and it's got that nice big fluffy spoolie that just really makes your lashes super long and fluffy and voluminous. So let's go to town on these lashes. Okay, and now to set my brows in place, I'm going to use, again, my go-to. This is the Kaja Brow Blowout. Last 2 steps before I do lips, I'm going to do a little bit of a highlight just because I really like this new highlighter. This is Heaven's Hue highlighter, and the color is Kitten. And this is so soft, and it doesn't have big chunks of glitter in it. It's just a really soft, smooth, even shimmer that just adds this glow to your skin. And to apply this, I'm using my Morphe M438 brush, and it's just another nice fluffy brush. And for the last step, we'll do lips. And for the lip color today, I'm going to line my lips with the Chantecaille Lip Definer, and this is in the color Tone. And that's the finished look for today. So thank you for watching that portion of the video. As I mentioned, I will link all of the products in the description box below. And the next portion of this video is dedicated to the topic of mental health and particularly microdosing and my experience with microdosing. So if you are interested in hearing about microdosing LSD and psilocybin, please stick around. Whew. Okay, so microdosing, where do I begin? This is harder to talk about than I thought it was going to be. It's actually a little bit harder to talk about than my previous video in which I was disclosing very personal information about my mental health. For some reason, this feels even more intimate, maybe because there's just this lingering fear that because these substances are still deemed illegal in most places, that people will immediately hear them and think, you're just self-medicating as a druggie or something like that. I don't really know what people think of psychedelics. I'm sure there are so many preconceptions about LSD. I mean, when people hear LSD, I think they just think of hippies in the 60s taking LSD and going to Grateful Dead shows, and that's pretty much it. But there's a lot more to it than that, and so I'm hoping that if you're here and you're listening, that you're listening with an open mind. And if you're not, then you should try microdosing because it opens your mind. And the word psychedelic is actually derived from the Greek meaning of mind manifesting. So these are definitely substances that live in a category unto themselves. And for me personally, I became interested in psychedelics when I was really struggling with depression and anxiety and symptoms of bipolar disorder, and was looking to other sources of relief besides big pharma, pharmaceuticals. And so a friend of mine had given me this book, and I'm sure a lot of you have heard of it by now because it's been on the New York Times bestseller list, I think, and it's pretty popularized by now, but this is Michael Pollan's How to Change Your Mind: What the New Science of Psychedelics Teaches Us About Consciousness, Dying, Addiction, Depression, and Transcendence. And I was kind of like, okay, you know, it piqued my interest, particularly in the context of helping with the symptoms that I was experiencing. So I shortly thereafter started microdosing LSD. Now LSD, also known as acid, also known as a hallucinogenic drug, was initially discovered in the ergo fungus that grows on rye and other grains. Now I'm going to consider this video part one, let's just say, of everything pertaining to psychedelics because there's so much to be said about the history, the politics, the many uses. In just talking about my experience, the first time I microdosed LSD, I was at home and I was by myself, and I had some kind of creative tasks that I wanted to do and planned to do during my first microdose because I had heard that it really enables the more creative compartments of your brain, and it helps to dissolve your ego enough to kind of free up this other space that's almost like a childlike wonder and childlike creativity that you used to have before it was squashed and squandered by the realities of society and the pressures of performing in classroom settings and all the other bullshit that we all grew up with. So I took it and I experienced enhanced sight. Colors were brighter. I was able to hear more clearly. I started to write and journal, and this was just like a flow state. I felt happy. I felt almost a little giddy. I had a lot of energy. I felt very truthful. I felt very truthful with myself. I felt very caring of myself, and it felt like if there had been other people there with me and around, that empathy and caringness would have been transferred to whoever else I was with. So it was a really special experience, and I waited a couple of days before I tried it again. And so with LSD or acid in particular, you can't really do it every day. Let me just state about both psilocybin and psilocybin mushrooms and LSD. They're non-addictive. You can't get addicted to these substances. You cannot overdose from these substances. They cannot kill you. They don't even necessarily work if you try to do them multiple days in a row, especially at higher doses. So with acid in particular, I was only microdosing that once every 2 to 4 days. The cool thing about it is that the effects of what you learn and the way that your ego is dissolved, the way that your creativity is sparked, in the way that you develop empathy for other people, and in the way that it kind of removes you from yourself so that you are looking very objectively at yourself, at a situation, at a relationship that you have with another person. It really enables you to rewire your reactions and responses to situations and events in your life and to other people in your life. And as I was saying, the cool thing about it is that that sticks around once the actual effects of the dose that you took wears off. So even though I was only microdosing LSD once every 3 days, the effects of those microdose experiences would trickle into the other days in which I wasn't microdosing. And I would start to see myself and how I operate within the world differently. I started to look at other people differently as well and have more empathy for them. I developed more confidence in my ability to express myself creatively. I think a lot of those channels and pathways, as I mentioned, had just been kind of squandered from childhood schooling, from having bad teachers, bad boyfriends, bad friendships, bad education system, bad professors, from anything that you could have possibly experienced up until this point that squandered that creative light. This brings it back, which was not only just exciting and elevating, but it made me realize that I can recreate the reality in which I exist. And I think Michael Pollan puts it really beautifully in this book. He kind of describes it as, throughout your life, you have a number of experiences that you have to react and respond to. And that creates grooves in your brain. And your brain is then trained whenever you are triggered by those scenarios or people or things to choose the groove that's already been created to react or respond to that situation. Now, what psychedelics do is they come along and lay down fresh snow, fresh powder over those grooves that have been created throughout your life. And once that fresh snow is laid down over those tracks, it gives you the opportunity to create new ones. And those are the new neural networks that are being enabled and created when you take psychedelics. And so I've experienced this firsthand. It has changed me in many ways. I think it's made me a better friend. It's made me a more interesting human. It's made me more interested in what other people are doing. It's made me ask a hell of a lot more questions. And it dissolves your ego, but especially in higher doses, it dissolves your ego. And I didn't know what that meant. And I want to dedicate this video to microdosing in particular and save the bigger trips, if you will, for another video because they deserve their own video unto themselves. But even with a microdose, you will experience somewhat of a dissolving of your ego, and it's a relief. It all of a sudden separates you from your emotions, which for someone suffering from certain mental health disorders, as you can imagine, is hugely important. The concept that I am not my emotions, that I can choose to react or respond differently to any given situation in my life, and that, as I mentioned earlier, I can really set the tone and create the reality in which I exist. So I continued to microdose and still sometimes continue to microdose LSD. However, I also microdose more frequently now psilocybin mushrooms, and I am more than happy to answer questions about specific dosage amounts and things like that if you want to shoot me a message. But my psilocybin mushrooms come in little capsule form, and it makes it very, very easy. I take them about 4 days on, 2 days off, or 4 days on, 3 days off, in conjunction with lion's mane. And lion's mane is another mushroom. It is non-psychoactive. So this is the lion's mane that I've been taking. I would take it anyways, regardless of whether or not I am microdosing, because again, this is non-psychoactive. You can buy it at a grocery store. That helps with memory and nerve support. And so taking this in conjunction with the psilocybin can really just help to aid cognitive function and prevent degenerative brain illnesses. On psilocybin, the effects are a little bit different than LSD. I think the main differentiator for me between the two would be that mushrooms really make you want to be in nature. It's crazy. They like draw you outside. So in smaller doses, you won't feel that pull as much. You'll get a lot of the similar symptoms, or at least I did, of, increased hearing ability, increased vision, increased creativity, increased brain function, as well as the, dissolving of the ego and all those other wonderful benefits. When taken in higher doses, I certainly, as I know many, many people do, feel that draw, that pull to be outside in nature, in a very just, calming and natural environment. And in that environment, you can have some really, really amazing experiences. And so, as I said, I will save that content for a later video, and wanted to just focus right now on kind of the initial groundwork into microdosing and my experience with microdosing. So I wanted to conclude by saying how hugely and enormously helpful these substances have been in aiding in my recovery and management of depression and symptoms of bipolar disorder. And I think that there's so much more discovery to be done that is just now becoming more and more available and accepted by larger institutions like Johns Hopkins and so forth, who are doing studies on the effects of these substances. I also want to, in future videos, talk a little bit more about some of the other therapies that are taking place, like ketamine therapy for depression and MDMA therapy for depression and PTSD and so forth, because we're just scratching the surface on how these naturally occurring elements can help us. And I personally find it incredibly silly and ignorant that they've all been deemed illegal and blacklisted by the government as dangerous substances, when you look at something like alcohol. It is addictive. You can absolutely overdose from it and it will kill you. And it causes thousands and thousands and thousands of deaths per year just in the United States, versus something that is non-addictive. You cannot overdose from it. It is mind expanding and potentially has a huge ability to treat such pervasive mental health disorders like depression, anxiety, bipolar, PTSD. And so I am excited to see some of the research that's coming out of these more credible institutions that I think will be much, much harder to ignore. Again, thank you so much for watching. This is not the easiest content to share because it is controversial, and I'm speaking about my personal experiences. And so I appreciate you watching this with an open mind. Please keep all comments constructive. Stay tuned, because we're just scratching the surface on this stuff, and I would love to dive deeper into this type of content in future videos. So let me know if there are specific topics or elements of this topic that you would like to hear more about, and I'll be sure to address those in future videos. Thank you so much for watching. Again, if you haven't already, please click to subscribe, like, comment, and share, and follow me on Instagram. And I will see you next week. Bye!